I've been looking forward to this series for about 2 months now. And now that I've seen it, did the first season of Lupin, the French Netflix original series, satisfy? Inspired by the adventures of Arsène Lupin, gentleman thief Assane Diop sets out to avenge his father for an injustice inflicted by a wealthy family. I say this pretty often when discussing a show or movie that is based on books. I haven't read it, so I've got to experience this without any background on the source material. Arsène Lupin is a fictional gentleman thief and master of disguise created in 1905 by French writer Maurice Leblanc. And this is the modern retelling of Lupin, where Omar Sy plays the main character. The series felt a little bit like Sherlock to me. Storytelling style, along with the winks and nods that come from Assane, are witty with a lighthearted flair. And even some of the music felt like it could have been from the BBC show. In addition to similar feels of Sherlock, the character of Assane reminded me a little of David Niven's Sir Charles Lytton, or the Phantom from the Pink Panther, and a little bit like Cary Grant's John Roby in To Catch a Thief. All of those characters are endearing in their own way. They're not the typical thief we all imagine when we think of a stealing criminal. Assane is truly a gentleman. He's kind and caring, but he's also smooth. He's smart and cunning, but don't think he's weak. He's a burly guy who can hold his own in a fight. Omar Sy really does a good job in the character. He's enjoyable on screen, and he becomes somebody that I found easy to root for, even though technically he's a bad guy, being a thief and all. I enjoyed the storytelling style in this too. I'm glad that the show builds in so much character development as the show goes along. It gives us both the present with Assane and decently long flashbacks with his upbringing. It builds so much context to his motivations, and it builds an engaging story along the way. As Assane sets out to avenge his father, he has to execute several schemes to uncover clues or to just gather information. He's a bit of a master of disguise, and I think the actions he undertakes are fun. Sometimes I think they're a bit simple though. The disguises for the most part are not overly drastic either, but they're subtle, which actually has a good effect as it relates to trying to figure out his identity, especially by other characters. The schemes aren't too complex either. They're pretty clever and they're fun, but I kind of expected some Ocean's 11 type of play to happen. Even still, to watch it happen and then have it explained after the action goes on, it's engaging. I really enjoyed the story arcs that relate to family. We get to see how Assane's father and upbringing influence his life and then influence the life of his son. And that's Assane's son. That's who I'm talking about there. Another thing I really liked was how the show addresses racism. It's not blatant, but there are multiple times that characters categorize or assume something about Assane, stop themselves short of fully saying it, and then he questions them. And it's a clever way to call attention to it. First 5 episodes make up part 1 of the story, and each of them are around 45-ish minutes, so they're a quick binge and it's easy to watch from episode to episode. Like I said, this is a French series, and the first episode takes place at the Louvre, and it is such a beautiful backdrop to a lot of the action. But I like that there's also some grittiness mixed in with the luxury. Assane lives in this crowded apartment, but we don't really know where it's at, or if it's a luxury building or an abandoned dump, which allows him then to retain mystery from us as the audience, even though we get a ton of backstory on him. I really enjoyed the flashback scenes because the actor who's playing the young Assane, he's really good. He's quiet, observant, and very sympathetic. Even though we really only get to see maybe a year or so's worth of info, I'm not talking a full year, just events or situations during a year, I was able to connect with him. And that helps me to connect even more to the adult version of Assane. And I know what his motivations are, I know why certain relationships are important to him, why he's so loyal, and it's a really great way to build out the character. But there are still portions of the characters that need to be filled in more, especially when it comes to a couple of the relationships. Perhaps these are going to be answered in subsequent seasons. And the missing info isn't enough for me to be overly bothered, but if it's not going to be addressed later on, then it will be really some unfortunate deficits to the show. One thing I enjoyed is that even the antagonists have regular motivations, that they're not larger than life, where it doesn't seem so out of context or out of place in what they do. And that makes then Assane's motivations and his actions, everything that he does, even though they're not hugely grandiose, they then fit in the realm of reality also. And so it makes this entire show so much more believable and so much more enjoyable. Several portions of the story are left to be answered in another season. Actions are uncovered which are pivotal to the plot, and so we're left with just about zero resolutions. There is one big revelation, but I think it's pretty obvious. And so it's less of a revelation and more of a confirmation to something that we guessed at. So this was frustrating in one sense, but it also whetted my appetite for the next season even more. I mean, I really want to know how all of this is going to converge and resolve. And because Netflix gave me access to an early screener, I reached out to them to see if they could give any hints on when we could expect a second season. But at the time that I am recording this, I haven't heard back, so here I wait impatiently. If you're looking for something that is a bit lighter, but still engaging and interesting to watch, part 1 of Lupin is the way to go. I'm still curious at how the entire thing is going to pan out with the second part. I mean, because is it going to increase my enjoyment of this first part, or is it all going to crumble and just fall apart? I'm going to have to wait and see. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and some violence. I give part 1 of Lupin 4 out of 5 couches. Are there any shows or movies that you like where the bad guy isn't really a bad guy? Kind of like Zangief. You know who I'm talking about? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.